All right, same as always, we have a pretty traditional looking transition question, so we should just go into the sentences and try to understand the relationship in a dumb way and think about what we might say. In her poetry collection, Thomasin Bula, Rita Dove, interweaves the titular character's personal stories with broader historical narratives. So there's some interweaving. She places Thomas's journey from the American South to the Midwest in the early 1900s within the larger context of the Great Migration. So that just seems like an example of the first part. Dove sets events from Ballula's personal life against the backdrop of the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. Well, that also seems like an example. A second example, but another example, right? So the first example is about Thomas, the second is about Ballula, but they both seem to be talking about the same thing, right? Putting something in backdrop, interweaving the big and the small, larger context, so there's clearly a repetition here. So specifically wouldn't make sense because even though that is a word we would use as a for example kind of situation, we're not adding on an example to a main point. We're adding on an example to an example. So that second example there is not an example of the first thing. It's another example that goes all the way back to the top. So the transitions don't work that way. We're not allowed to kind of like skip around sentences. So this specifically would need to reference specifically the sentence that became before it. So that we're jumping around. We can't do that. Thus is a word that means so, and that just doesn't make any sense here. It's not like Dove is setting Ballula's events in some sort of context because of Thomas's events. They're both part of the same story. They're both kind of equal examples, not one causing the other. Regardless, it's a word that means but, or it's a kind of a dismissive word. So again, we're trying to say these things are both examples of the same thing. So it would make sense that we would continue an idea, not contrast it. And so similarly is going to be the best fit. It is a similar situation. On the one hand, the first example is going to be one kind of interweaving, and the second is another, right? They're both similar. They're both similarly interweaving the character's life with the backdrop of history. So it does fit. It's not a common answer. Very often words like similarly and its cousin likewise would not work. But if likewise was the answer here, I'd say this would be the rare occasion where it would fit. So if you've seen some of my videos, you probably heard me saying repeatedly that the word likewise is almost always wrong. I stand by that advice. But if choice D were said likewise here, I'd say, yeah, this is the case where it works. So hopefully now you have a better sense of what that word is really supposed to be used for. And this would be the rare case where it would make sense because they're saying two things are alike. There are similar examples of this same idea of this interweaving of a character with history. So hopefully that sticks with you in case you see that choice again in the future.